Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. So this happened 2 days ago, and it's still freaking me out. I'm 19M, and at exactly 7:17 a.m., I went to take a shower. I know the time was 7:17 for sure because I was texting my friend and literally told him, I'm hopping in the shower right now, and the timestamp shows 7:17. My plan was simple, quick rinse, nothing over 20 minutes, because me and my friend had agreed to hit the gym at 8 a.m. sharp. I get in, do my usual routine, soap, shampoo, rinse, nothing out of the ordinary. When I finished, I hopped out, dried off, got dressed, and did my little skincare routine, which takes no more than 5 minutes tops. The whole time I was conscious, fully aware, not tired, not dizzy, nothing weird. I even had my playlist running while I was in there. But here's where things got crazy. When I checked my phone after all of that, it said 11:52 p.m. Like what? Almost 17 hours gone, just like that. At first, I thought maybe it was a glitch. Maybe my phone froze or bugged out. But nope. I had 2 missed calls from my mom, probably checking on me, and multiple texts from my friend. At 8:20 a.m., he messaged me joking like, Bro, are you still showering or ditching me? Then at 9:23 a.m., he texted again saying he was just going to the gym without me since it was getting late. So clearly, for him and everyone else, the day went on as normal. The weirdest part is that inside the bathroom, it didn't feel like more than half an hour had passed. My playlist even proves it. By the time I looked at my phone, it had only reached track 7. The music didn't bug, didn't skip, didn't stop, so time inside felt normal. But outside? It's like the world fast-forwarded by an entire day, while I was stuck in some bubble of slowed-down time. I don't even know how to explain it. I ended up telling my mom and my friend that I just felt super sleepy after my shower and crashed, because how do you even explain losing an entire day while being awake the whole time? Has anyone ever experienced something like this? I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but it honestly freaks me out. I really don't want it happening again, but I also can't stop thinking about it. Any clue what that was? Story 2. About a week ago, my husband lost his Kindle, which he reads nightly. We searched everywhere for it, separately and together, opened drawers, checked underneath things, etc. He does have ADHD, so the idea of setting it down somewhere unexpected was considered, and we checked even illogical places where he may have carried it and put it down after being distracted by a new task. We checked everywhere in the house multiple times. After about 3 days of searching, we decided the most likely action he took was carrying the Kindle downstairs and then switching to taking out the trash, and we assume he may have placed the Kindle down somewhere amongst the trash, and it must have been accidentally thrown away as the next day was trash day. He purchased a new Kindle and placed it on his nightstand where his Kindle normally lives so he can read while in bed. About 5 days after that, in the evening, I notice his old Kindle placed on the opposite edge of his nightstand, about a foot away from the new Kindle. The case was open and the book cover image was showing. I thought to myself, oh, he must have found his old Kindle and placed it there. I didn't tell him immediately because of this thought, because how else could the Kindle have suddenly appeared in the most obvious spot we checked around repeatedly? Later that evening, when we are both in the bedroom, I say to him, I see you found your old Kindle. Where did you find it? As I motion to the 2 Kindles. A look of fear and surprise washes over him. He essentially asks me if I found the Kindle and says I must have found it because he certainly did not find it, and if he had found it, he would have been very excited and remembered finding it because he was very upset to have lost it. I then also felt fear as I realized and explained to him that I definitely did not find it. I just noticed it only a couple hours earlier, so how the heck did it suddenly show up in the most obvious and natural spot next to the new Kindle? We discussed several ADHD possibilities, even him having unpacked his backpack recently, but he was adamant that the backpack never contained the Kindle, that its last place was definitely on his nightstand as he reads nightly, agreed. And he would have noticed and been really excited if he found it in the backpack as he hadn't used this backpack on our most recent trip, and it had already been checked during our search. We even discussed someone having entered our home, but we have a few cameras, a Wi-Fi lock on the door, and who would reverse burgle a home anyways. Or even steal only a Kindle in the first place, as nothing else was missing. There is no evidence of anyone else having entering the home. Story 3. So this isn't a big story, but it might be of interest nonetheless. We have this apartment we usually stay at on weekends, sort of like our little getaway place. When we first set it up, we did the usual thing, buying a bunch of kitchen stuff. One of the first things we picked up was a set of 3 matching pots, each a different size. They came with lids that had a very distinct design, heavy, completely flat glass tops with wide, almost uncurved steel handles. Not the kind of lids you'd easily confuse with anything else, you know? They've been in that kitchen for years now, and we've used them regularly without ever thinking twice. Then about 2 weeks ago, something strange happened. My husband was in the kitchen and noticed that one of the lids, the medium-sized one, had somehow doubled. Instead of 3 lids for 3 pots, we suddenly had 4. And the new one wasn't just similar, it was absolutely identical. Same shape, same glass, same handle, even the same little manufacturing marks. For a size that only ever came with 1 lid, we now had 2. We've racked our brains trying to figure it out. It's not like burglars would break in just to add something, especially not an IKEA lid that hasn't even been sold for years. And we certainly didn't buy an extra one or bring one from another place. There's simply no explanation for it. The rest of the kitchen was untouched, nothing missing, nothing out of place. Just this one perfectly duplicated lid. Story 4. This happened to me a few years ago, and it still sticks with me, so I thought I'd share it here. This was about 2019. I worked as a waitress at a well-known sports bar and was heading for my evening shift. The drive from my house to my job was an hour. So I'm listening to the radio, taking in the trees and everything that I'm passing because it's fall and it looks so nice. It's about 15 minutes into my drive when I noticed this young girl walking on the side of the highway. Based on what I glimpsed of her, she appeared to be a young teenager. She had dark hair braided in pigtails and a highlighter bright pink backpack. Like you couldn't miss her. I remember it so well because I considered stopping as asking if she needed a ride, being such a young woman as alone. I am also a woman. But I decided against it because I watched too many true crime documentaries and didn't want to end up in one. But I digress. I carried on with my drive. 30 minutes later, I'm passing this large bridge on my drive. This is like my I'm almost there moment, so I'm only about 10 minutes out. And I see her again. Exact same girl. I first caught a glimpse of the pink backpack in the distance and immediately slowed down enough to look. Sure enough, same young girl. Same dark braids. Same backpack. Only I've been driving at least 80 miles per hour since I last saw her. There's absolutely no way that she walked all of that way before my car got there. I chalked it up to I'm just imagining things, because what else is there? But then, I get into town and get ready to pull into work. Where our building is, it's like in the middle of a strip mall almost. You had to drive down like a long road and make a small circle before you hit our parking lot. And who was walking right on the edge of that circle? The same girl. Same braids, backpack, everything. I can even still remember what she was wearing. I pulled into work and all of my co-workers were in the smoke spot out back, so they could see me pull in and they should see across this circle. The first thing I did when I got out was ask if they saw the girl over there. They all turned at once to look, and she was not there. She was just gone, vanished into thin air. Now while this is a little strip mall, besides our restaurant and a mom and pop shop that was closed at that time, like I don't know where else she could have gone. Or how she kept up with me on foot. This isn't the first time I've seen someone that no one else has, but it's the most recent. It still sits with me, because I cannot understand it. Every conclusion I come up with is mediocre at best. Story 5. So today was supposed to be just a normal day. I was at my grandparents' house for Labor Day weekend, hanging out with my fiancée, my sister, and her girlfriend. We ate, we laughed, we caught up on family stuff. Nothing weird, nothing unusual. When it got later in the evening, we all packed up and started driving back toward my place. The ride was chill, just music, some small talk, the usual after-family gathering vibe. Then about halfway home, I looked out the window and saw something that made me feel like my brain short-circuited. Off to the side, in the parking lot of a church, was this big group of people. Maybe around 20 of them, just standing there in a cluster. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe there had been an event, or maybe they were saying goodbyes after a service. But then I looked closer. One girl caught my attention right away. She was mid-step, like this woman walking, frozen in place. But not like she was hesitating or anything. She was straight up stuck. The freakiest part was her skirt. It was moving ever so slightly in the wind, so I know time wasn't frozen. But she was. Completely still. Then my eyes darted around, and that's when I realized it wasn't just her. The entire group of people was frozen solid. Not a head turned, not a hand shifted. Not even the tiniest movement you'd expect from a crowd. One man even looked like he was mid-sentence, hand up in a gesture, like he was frozen mid-conversation. I yelled out and started pointing, and everyone else in the car looked too. The reaction was the same. Wait, what the hell? I cranked my head around to keep looking as we drove past, expecting at least one person to move or adjust. But no. They were all still there, completely paused, like some invisible hand hit the freeze frame button on reality. The girl mid-walk didn't even finish her step. It honestly looked exactly like the mannequin challenge from back in 2016, but this was no choreographed TikTok moment. This was late at night in some random church parking lot. It gave me chills. That was a couple of hours ago, and I'm still wide awake thinking about it. I've been scrolling through Reddit, looking at glitch in the Matrix threads, and apparently other people have seen similar things. Entire groups of people stuck like statues for no reason. But reading about it doesn't make it less weird when you actually see it. Story 6. This is hands down the freakiest thing that has ever happened to me. About 16 or 17 years ago, my wife and I bought this beautiful desk. It had a big drawer in the front, kind of the centerpiece of the whole thing. My wife absolutely loved it. It was her pride and joy back then. About a year after we bought it, though, our apartment got broken into. The robber actually jumped through the window and landed directly on the desk. That moment left its mark. The surface of the desk and the front of the drawer were scratched up pretty badly. We hated the damage, but at least we still had the desk and the drawer was still very much intact. Fast forward a bit, we moved house, and then even moved to a different city. During that time, the desk went into storage for about 3 or 4 years. When we finally took it back out, the drawer was missing. Just gone. I mean, how do you lose a drawer? It doesn't exactly grow legs and walk off. But somehow it wasn't there anymore. That was about 12 years ago. Now here's the kicker. For the last 12 years I've had to hear about that missing drawer. My wife never really let it go. According to her, it was my fault somehow, like I misplaced it or forgot it in storage, or who knows what. Every so often she'd bring it up. How much of a shame it was, how I must have lost it, how the desk just wasn't the same anymore without it. A small thing, sure, but one of those nagging mysteries that sticks with you. Then last weekend, everything changed. We went back to the city where we used to live, just for a few days' holiday. While walking down a street a few blocks away from our old apartment, the topic came up again. Yep, the infamous missing drawer. I groaned and told her, "Not this again, can we finally drop it?" But literally a minute later, leaning against the wall of an apartment block, was a black desk drawer. Now this is Germany, and it's pretty common here. When people want to get rid of furniture, they just leave it on the street, leaning against a wall, free for anyone to take. But this drawer, this random black drawer, looked way too familiar. We both stopped in our tracks and just stared. When we walked closer, our jaws dropped. It had the exact same scratch marks from when the burglar had jumped through our window all those years ago. We were completely dumbfounded. We grabbed it, took it back with us, and the most insane part, it slid right back into our desk perfectly. After 12 years, our missing drawer had literally turned up on the street, just blocks away from where we used to live. Story 7. I'm seriously freaked out right now. Last week my bank card stopped working for no reason. I couldn't use it contactless or in the ATM, so I canceled it and ordered a replacement. Today my new bank card arrived, and I went in my purse to get rid of the old one. There was 2. The one I've just canceled and a card that's been canceled for at least 2 years. Can't have been missed, as every month I take everything out of my purse, including the cards, sort through everything, throw out old receipts, etc., and put it all back in. It can't be explained by me forgetting to get rid of the older one, as every time I sort out my purse there has only been one. And to make this even stranger, as I said, the card was canceled over 2 years ago. I've had the purse 7/8 months max. This has me absolutely baffled. Edited to include the fact that my eldest daughter saw me get rid of the older one. Story 8. I had, I guess you could call it, a strange visitation several years ago, and it still unsettles me whenever I think about it. It happened one night after picking up my child from their fast food job. For reference, I live on the outskirts of a city in the interior of BC, so the drive is usually quiet, dark, and uneventful. Nothing out of the ordinary ever really happens on those roads. That night, though, was different. It was dark on the drive, and it was dark when we pulled into the driveway at home. But here's the first strange thing. If it was so dark, how was I able to see the back seat so clearly in that moment? I've asked myself that question countless times, and I still don't have an answer. I parked the car, probably took the keys out of the ignition, and leaned down to grab my purse, which had slipped onto the floor of the passenger side. When I sat back up, my eyes automatically flicked over the rearview mirror. That's when I saw him. Sitting in the very middle of the back seat was a man. Blonde hair, straight and neat, maybe late 20s or 30s. He wore a striped shirt in what I can only describe as pink or salmon tones. His expression was strange, not threatening, not angry, but more like he was happy, maybe even smiling faintly. It didn't look like he was moving or breathing, though. The whole thing had this odd quality, almost like I was looking at a still photograph rather than a living person. The sight of him shocked me so badly that I froze. I didn't say a single word to my child, who was sitting right there beside me, completely unaware. I didn't look back again to double-check, didn't try to rationalize it in the moment. I just quietly opened my door, got out of the car, and walked straight into the house as if nothing had happened. I didn't want to frighten my child, and I knew deep down that there couldn't possibly be a stranger actually sitting in our back seat. The weirdest part? Nothing like that ever happened again. We had owned that car for years. It was a used vehicle, but as far as I knew, it had never been in an accident or had any kind of dark history attached to it. And yet, on that one night, for reasons I'll never understand, this unknown man appeared so vividly in my back seat that I can picture him even now. I didn't recognize him then, and I still don't recognize him today. He wasn't anyone I knew, and no one close to me ever fit that description. But I can't shake the feeling that he was real, in some sense, even if only for that brief moment. Who was he? Why did he appear to me in my car that night? And why has he never appeared since? I don't think I'll ever know. Story 9. My son spilled something on the stairs the other day, and it was not subtle at all. A very obvious stain, right in the middle of the steps where you couldn't miss it. I had to sidestep around it just to get upstairs. Naturally, I asked him to clean it up. A little while later, I noticed him with a wet wipe in his hand, heading toward the stairs, so I figured okay, job done. For the rest of that day, I went up and down those stairs at least 10 times, probably more, and I didn't see the stain once. It was gone. I assumed he wiped it up properly, and didn't give it another thought. The next day, though, things got weird. I was walking upstairs, carrying my dog in my arms. She's this sweet little thing, and I was talking to her as I climbed, just sort of babbling affectionate nonsense the way you do with pets. You're so adorable, you're so special, maybe we knew each other in a past life. That kind of talk. I was mid-sentence when suddenly, bam. Out of nowhere, the spill was back. Same exact stain, same exact spot on the stairs. It looked identical to how it had the day before, as if it had never been wiped at all. I kept walking but felt this weird jolt of confusion. Had I really seen that? I told myself I must have been mistaken yesterday, maybe I'd imagined it being gone. Still, I called down to my son, reminding him, firmly this time, that he needed to clean up the spill since he had clearly skipped it yesterday. Here's where it got even stranger. He swore up and down that he had cleaned it. He looked genuinely offended, like I was accusing him of lying. I was already a little annoyed, thinking he was just trying to get out of trouble, so I turned around to march back down the stairs and show him the evidence. But when I looked again, the stain was gone. Completely gone. The step was clean as if nothing had ever been there. The whole exchange, me seeing it, walking a few more steps, calling to him, turning back, took maybe 10 seconds. He hadn't gone near the stairs in that time, hadn't had a chance to run over with a wipe and scrub it up. He was nowhere close, and yet the mess had disappeared right before my eyes. I froze there for a second, processing what had just happened. The day before, the stain was there, then it wasn't. The next day it was there again, until suddenly it wasn't. The same spill, reappearing and vanishing like some kind of weird magic trick. I'll admit, my first reaction wasn't fear, just this rush of excitement, like I had just witnessed something out of the ordinary, a little glitch in the Matrix moment. I was grinning, ready to tell everyone what I had just seen. When I did share it, though, my family's reaction was underwhelming to say the least. A flat, unimpressed, "Oh." That was it. No amazement, no curiosity, just a shrug and moving on with their day. Meanwhile, I'm left replaying it in my head, wondering how on earth a stain could blink in and out of existence like that. Did I imagine it? Was it some trick of the light? Or did I actually experience a little break in reality? Either way, I'll never forget it. Story 10. I don't know if there's been discussion about this phenomenon before, but it's one that we've discussed with my husband many times. We both agree that we've met some really weird people over the years that seemed like they weren't real. Here's some of the key features of each encounter with these non-existing people. They appear quite suddenly. For example, you cannot see from where they appeared on the chair next to you, or if they ever walked through the door to suddenly stand there in front of you. They seem to have some reason to talk to you at that particular moment, and often have weirdly insightful things to say that directly relate to you and your current situation. They're always alone. When they've said the things they want to say, sometimes giving you some item, etc., helping you out, etc., they disappear, and you cannot see where they went. Others around you can see them as well, but don't seem to notice the sudden appearance/disappearance. If they've told you something specific about themselves which should make it possible for you to discover their identity, you still cannot find anything about them online, phone books, etc. If you visited a place where they work, etc., the next day you visit that place, their office/workshop/whatever is not there, and it seems that place has been abandoned for years. We've met these people several times, often during some important moment in our lives like getting engaged, etc. We've also had friends whose past was never clear. They had no family that we knew of or would have met, and they disappeared suddenly after a few years of friendship. After extensive search, we haven't been able to find any clue as to what happened to them, and if they mention family members, those names also draw a blank on searches. Of course, you think these friends moved out, got a new job, went to study somewhere, or left the country, maybe even died, but usually others who knew them as well are just as perplexed as you as to where they disappeared. It's like they never even existed. Story 11. A long time ago, I had this old wagon car that I was really proud of. It wasn't anything fancy, but I had gotten the darkest possible tint on all the windows except for the windshield. Even that had a layer of tint, so from the outside, it was basically impossible to see inside. People could walk right by and not have a clue what was going on. Because of that, me and my girlfriend at the time kind of used it as our little private getaway spot. We didn't always feel like going back to my place or hers, so the car became our fun zone. It sounds funny now, but back then it just made sense. One day we decided to head to this underground parking lot. Not really sketchy, just one of those half-empty lots you'd find downtown, where nobody really bothered you. We drove in, found a spot away from the main traffic, and parked. Everything up to that point was totally normal. I remember pulling in, putting the car in park, and turning the engine off. That part is crystal clear in my memory. But then, it's like the film strip of my memory just cuts. There's no fade out, no sense of getting tired, nothing gradual at all. The next thing I remember is opening my eyes, and she was waking up at the exact same time. We were both completely naked, sitting there in the car, and neither of us had the slightest clue what had happened in between. Not just hazy memory, zero memory. She turned to me and said, "What just happened?" And I had no answer. It wasn't like we had been drinking. We hadn't taken anything. There were no strange fumes in the car, no carbon monoxide leak, nothing like that. We had both been fully conscious when we parked, talking, laughing, ready to fool around. Then, total blackout, like someone had just hit a switch. It wasn't like falling asleep, either. There was no grogginess, no drowsy lead-in, and no groggy hangover feeling afterward. It was literally, 1 second I was parking, the next second I was waking up confused and disoriented, hours later, with my girlfriend looking just as freaked out as I felt. We sat there in silence for a while, trying to piece it together. Did something happen to us? Did someone come into the car? But that didn't make sense. The doors were locked, the windows untouched, nothing had been moved or disturbed. There were no signs anyone had been near us at all. The car was exactly as it had been when we parked it. The weirdest part is that we both woke up at the same exact time. Like synchronized. That's not normal. If two people fall asleep, one usually stirs before the other. But no, our eyes opened in the same instant, like we'd both been switched off and then switched back on together. To this day, I still don't know what happened. It wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol, and it sure wasn't just a nap. It felt more like we'd been erased for a stretch of time. And the fact that both of us experienced the exact same thing? That's what really messes with me. We never figured it out. We never even really talked about it much afterward. It was just too strange. But sometimes I think back on that night in the underground lot and wonder, what really happened in that blackout? Story 12. This has been bothering me for a couple of decades. When I was a teenager, I broke my leg and had a cast that extended from my toes all the way up to my thigh. I had just gone to bed, and I remember it being dusk outside, so there was still some light in the room. Suddenly I realized that I needed to use the restroom, which was annoying given how difficult it was to get around. I got up to go pee, and coming back into the room, I tripped on something, and as I was falling, everything slowed down. I was unable to stop myself from falling, as my arms were tangled in my crutches. And I realized that my forehead was on a direct collision course with the corner of my very sharp, very dense Formica desk. I know I was falling hard and fast. Again, I couldn't stop myself or move quickly enough, even though it seemed like time slowed down. The middle of my forehead was absolutely about to have an extremely hard direct hit with the corner of this desk, and there's a good chance that if I were knocked out or incapacitated, I wouldn't be found until morning. I remember processing all of this and bracing myself for, this is going to be bad. Just before or as my head hit the corner, there was a flash of bright blue light, and I found myself in my bed, under my covers, and with my leg propped up on the pillows I kept for that purpose. I wasn't injured. I had not been sleeping. I had not just woken up. I was not groggy. It was disorienting and extremely confusing, but my mind was very clear. It was difficult to get to sleep after that, just trying to wrap my brain around what had happened, but I also had this peaceful feeling. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Story 13. About half a year ago, me and a group of friends were hanging out on a regular evening. Nothing special, just one of those nights where we didn't feel like cooking anything complicated, so we decided pizza was the answer. Instead of ordering out, we went to our local store, the kind that sells those frozen pizzas for cheap. We agreed we'd grab 4 of them, enough to fill us up without breaking the bank. That's exactly what we did, for pizzas counted and paid for. Back at the house, we realized the oven could only hold 2 pizzas at a time. No problem, we'd cook the first 2, eat them, then do the second batch. So that's what happened. We baked the first pair, pulled them out piping hot, and demolished them. Then we baked the next 2, did the same, and by then we were stuffed and satisfied. It was at this point that things got weird. The oven was still warm, still on, and one of my friends walked over to switch it off. But then he froze and said, guys." We all looked over, and sitting there in the oven, clear as day, was another pizza. We just stared at it. We'd only bought 4. We'd only cooked 4. And we'd eaten 4. There was no way there should be anything left. Yet here it was, a whole other pizza sitting in the oven like it had been there all along. It wasn't burned, it wasn't half-cooked, and it didn't look like something left behind. It looked exactly like one of the pizzas we had already eaten earlier. Same brand, same toppings, same size. It was as though one of the pizzas had respawned, like we were living in a video game with unlimited items. Naturally, after the shock wore off, we cooked it properly and ate it. And it tasted totally normal. Not old, not spoiled, not off in any way. It was just pizza. But the question remained, where did it come from? We tried to rationalize it at the time. Maybe we miscounted? No, impossible. We had all been there in the store and agreed on 4. We had all been there when the boxes were opened and unwrapped. We had all eaten 4 pizzas, and every one of us remembered it clearly. There wasn't an extra box hidden somewhere. It wasn't like someone had snuck in and put another pizza in the oven for us as a joke. We had accounted for every single one. It sounds silly, I know, it's just a pizza. But the fact that it appeared out of nowhere, fully real and edible, makes it one of the strangest things I've ever experienced. We weren't drunk, we weren't high, nothing like that. We were just hanging out, eating, and suddenly reality decided to hand us a bonus meal. Story 14. This has been bothering me for a couple of decades now, and I still don't really know how to make sense of it. I was a teenager at the time, stuck in a full leg cast after breaking my leg pretty badly. The cast extended all the way from my toes up to my thigh, which made everything about daily life harder, walking, sitting, even just lying down. Nights were especially awkward, because I had to prop my leg on pillows to get comfortable. One evening, I had just gone to bed. It was dusk outside, that in-between time when the light isn't fully gone yet, so my room still had this faint glow. I was settling in when I suddenly realized I needed to use the restroom. Not exactly a thrilling situation when you're in a huge cast and dependent on crutches. Still, I got up and made the slow, careful trip. Coming back into my room, though, everything went wrong. I tripped on something as I came through the doorway, maybe the edge of a rug, maybe the crutches catching, and suddenly I was falling. What made it so vivid was how time seemed to slow down. I was tangled in my crutches, my arms caught up and useless. I couldn't stop myself, couldn't even shift my weight to protect my fall. And then I realized with absolute clarity where I was headed. My forehead was on a perfect collision course with the sharp corner of my desk. It was a heavy, dense Formica desk with edges that weren't forgiving at all. I remember thinking, with this strange detached calm, this is going to be really bad. I knew how hard I was falling. I knew if I hit that desk in the middle of my forehead, it could knock me out cold, or worse. And since it was late and no one was likely to check on me until morning, the idea of being unconscious there on the floor wasn't just scary, it was terrifying. I braced mentally for the impact. I knew it was coming. But just before, or maybe exactly as, my forehead should have slammed into that corner, something completely unexplainable happened. There was a flash of bright blue light, almost electric in quality, and in the blink of an eye I wasn't falling anymore. I was in my bed, under my covers. My leg was propped up neatly on the pillows, just the way I'd arranged them earlier. My crutches weren't tangled with me, and there was no pain, no injury, no sign anything had happened. I hadn't been dreaming. I hadn't even drifted off yet when I got up to go to the bathroom. I wasn't groggy or disoriented the way you are when you wake up suddenly. My mind was crystal clear, and that's exactly why it was so confusing. I lay there in bed, heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. It wasn't one of those common falling dreams, where your body jolts you awake at the last second. I've had those before, and this wasn't it. This was different. I hadn't been asleep. I hadn't woken up from anything. One moment I was in freefall, absolutely certain I was about to crack my head open, and the next moment I was safely tucked in bed as though nothing had happened. Oddly enough, once the shock wore off, I felt a strange sense of peace. I couldn't explain what happened. I still can't, but I wasn't scared anymore. It was like something or someone had hit a reset button for me in that moment, pulling me out of danger and setting me back where I belonged. Even now, decades later, I replay it sometimes. Was it some kind of hallucination? A time glitch? Divine intervention? I don't know. All I know is it was real, and I wasn't under the influence of anything. No drugs, no alcohol, not even pain medication at that point. I was just a teenager with a broken leg, trying to get through a normal night. And yet, something extraordinary happened. Has anyone else ever experienced something like this? Story 15. When I was around 16 to 17 years old, one time I was sitting at the dining table. My dad was sitting next to me, cutting up a sausage. I was watching him do it, and then everything happened so fast. Something black moved across the table so fast, hitting his hand, and the big knife he was holding pushing it aside, which cut the sausage the wrong way and it fell to the floor. I jumped in my seat. I then blinked. The sausage wasn't on the floor. The knife was still in his hands the way it was supposed to, and he was staring at me as if he had just seen a ghost. I was just staring back at him, trying to play it off because I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. He then asked me why'd I jump in my seat. He was just as startled as I was, only he had a better poker face at the moment. I told him I thought I saw something. He then said, "You saw it fall down too." My stepmom, who was standing behind us back, turned washing the dishes, turned around, and she was so confused about what we were talking about. Didn't hear or see anything. We heard the thing hit the table, and saw it just disappear into thin air the same way it showed up. We saw the knife moving to the side, cutting the sausage the wrong way, which made it fall down. We saw the sausage on the floor. Both of us. One blink later it never happened. Sausage on the table, knife in his hand, and the only thing that happened was me jumping in my seat. Story 16. So it's Friday, sunny, a pretty normal day. Me and my roommate decided to take a midday walk around the neighborhood. Nothing special, we do this a lot, just a little break in the day. We leave our place, walk down the street, and I immediately notice something kind of dumb but that I always clock. The curb was empty. Usually on trash day, the neighbors put their bins out, and sometimes they leave them sitting around until the evening. Most weeks, I'm the one who winds up dragging them in from the curb in the morning. It's one of those little things that makes me feel like a responsible adult, you know? This time, though, someone had already brought them in. I remember thinking, okay, guess I won't get my minor hit of adulting this week. We did our walk. Pretty uneventful. 8 years I've walked the same route, so I tend to drift into autopilot. But on the way back, passing the same spot where the bins normally sit, I felt this weird moment of awareness. It's hard to explain, like my brain suddenly clicked on from daydream mode just to note, hey, no bins here. Nobody said anything. It was just this fleeting, sharp awareness that stuck with me. We get inside, everything feels normal again. I'm puttering around the house, drinking my latte, rinsing out a few mugs. Totally classic day off type of stuff. Our sink faces the street, so I've got this nice little view while doing dishes. And then bam. I look up mid-scrub, and the bins are there. Back on the curb. Just sitting there like they'd never been moved at all. My stomach dropped. Immediately, I started questioning myself. Did I really misremember? Did I zone out so hard that I imagined an empty curb? I've made some poor life choices over the years, so naturally my first thought was, oh great, my brain is finally breaking. Maybe I'm losing it. But then my roommate comes into the kitchen. I tell her, hey, I'm gonna go outside and bring the bins in. And she gives me this puzzled look and says, what? They're already in. I insist, no, go look. So she does. And she freaks out too. She swears up and down she also noticed the bins weren't there during our walk. Now we're both standing there wide-eyed like, what the actual hell? We tried to calm down with a rational explanation. The neighbors do have an elderly grandmother who sometimes gets confused. Maybe she thought it was still Thursday and dragged the bins out again by mistake. That made sense, at least enough to settle us down. I still felt weird as I brought them back in though. Like the whole thing just didn't sit right. I actually forgot about it for a while, until tonight. It's Sunday evening, just about half an hour ago. My roommate, stressed from work, suddenly blurts out, oh yeah, remember the trash cans? I was like, oh god, yeah. She says she checked the neighbor's security camera. They had installed one recently by the building's front door, ironically because of the aforementioned grandma confusion, and had given us the login info just in case. So she'd gone back through the feed. And in the 30 minutes between us getting home and me doing the dishes, nobody left the building. Nobody touched the bins. There was literally zero activity on the cameras. Yet somehow in that half hour, the garbage bins went from not there to there. When she told me this, we both freaked out all over again. Like total goosebumps. There's just no way to explain it. I barely ever post on Reddit, but this one is making me do it. It's minor, sure, we're talking about garbage bins, not UFOs, but it's actually uncomfortable even writing this down. It's one of those things that makes you feel like reality glitched for just a second, and you can't shake the feeling that something's off. Too trippy. Story 17. I'm not sure what the right language is to describe this experience. I usually call it a glitch in the matrix, so this is probably the right spot. About 3 years ago, I was hiking the Narrows in Zion. This is a long out and back hike, unless you go a very long way, in a narrow canyon with a river running through it for those who've not been. There are no side paths one can take, and because the riverbed is full of boulders, people move pretty slowly in the river as you have to pay attention to each step. Prior to entering the canyon, you walk along the river on a paved path for maybe 100 feet. This is, of course, also how you exit. There are a few stairs here and a small beach, where people sometimes stop to change shoes, etc. On my way to the river, I notice a man wearing a shirt with the rooster from Moana, and think, just saw that shirt last week at Disneyland. He is walking with two very wet, very overweight women in spandex. It's clear they've just finished the hike, and I am relieved because I was worried the hike might be too difficult for me. I think, if they can do it, then I should be just fine. To be extra clear, we pass one another. They are leaving and I am arriving. I enter the river a few minutes later and begin making my way through the canyon. I've probably been in the water for 5 minutes or so when, again, I pass the same man and the same two women. They are finishing the hike and are headed towards the beach and stairs to exit. In shock, I say, I just saw you 10 minutes ago. I noticed your shirt because I just saw it when I was in Disneyland last week. And the three don't acknowledge me or really even look in my direction but just keep going on their way. Curious on any thoughts or insights you might have. Story 18. Similar happened to me coming from Transylvania in bus to Bucharest. Exactly in Bucharest, main street full of cars in 2017. I was inside the bus, no alcohol, drugs, or medication. I saw from the window an accident, was a lady in her car and a taxi. I remember all the details, the taxi man getting out of the car. I remember his face and the lady movements and reaction. She has a company ID/batch. I basically catch all the details in that moment. The bus move-in is line to continue, and exactly after maximum 1 or 2 minutes, I saw the exact same situation, all the exact same details of the car and taxi, and the same woman and taxi man, same movements, same reaction, same moment. After this I start my journey researching space-time anomalies. I study several disciplines, including ITC, quantum physics, time travel, teleportation, neuroscience, etc. I start questioning the nature and fundamentals of reality. We are biocomputers like the plants and animals. All around us is computation. We probably live in a kind of simulation, but I'm still collecting books, old books, journals, magazines, scientific papers, people's stories, rare PDFs, etc. Just to understand from all the disciplines possible what we are, why we exist, how reality works. FOIA CIA library helped me a lot to understand better the technology that was classified. I stopped working in my area. Now I'm a full-time high-tech and science researcher. I start studying electrical engineering and want to study physics in future. I hope my experience helped you to understand that you are not alone. Story 19. When I was a kid, my parents used to smoke cigarettes. I was in the dining room, and through the doorway I could see my mom in the kitchen at RHE's sink hand-washing dishes. The way the kitchen was configured is that my mom was at the wall on the opposite side of where the doorway was at, and her back was completely turned to the doorway. Everyone else was gone for the day. I was looking at a BIC disposable lighter that had a butterfly design that was sitting on the dining room table, just staring at it lying on its side. All of a sudden, the lighter instantly vanished right before my eyes. As in, it was like watching an old film with some of the frames cut out and spliced back together. It was that quick. I looked up, and my mom was still in the kitchen at the sink doing the dishes with her back turned. Even if she was very quick with her hands, there was no way I wouldn't have noticed the blur of her hand going by, nor would have I missed her walking back into the kitchen after it happened. And she surely would have said something along the lines of, "I don't want you playing with this." It's well over 40 years later, and I still don't know what happened that day. Another unexplained incident that happened many years later was coming into the kitchen in my apartment and finding everything covered with a very fine coating of powder. It looked like baby powder, but it seemed a bit finer, and the coating was even throughout. We didn't have any baby powder in the house. This one isn't as dramatic as the lighter incident, and I'm thinking some weird vibration happened in the building and might have shaken stuff off of the drywalling, but the fineness and evenness had me baffled and still does. That morning was the only time it ever happened there. Story 20. So yesterday me and my friend B were in the car, and we were going to pick up our other friend F. Earlier in the day, as we were talking on the phone, my friend F says she had broken a nail and lost it, and she was really bummed about it. In the afternoon, me and B get in the car to go pick up F, and we found her missing nail in the passenger seat. We knew it was hers because it had a very specific design she had chosen and designed herself, and also she was in my passenger seat the day before. We thought, cool, she'll be very happy. We arrive at her house, and she gets into the car, and she says all giddy, "Look guys, I found the nail, it was under the bed," and she shows all her nails intact. Me and B look at each other perplexed, so we tell her everything, and we show her the nail. She freaked out like I'm not kidding. She's been experiencing derealization and anxiety since yesterday, and she's really sick. We gave her the nail, but now we're regretting it as she keeps analyzing it. We know 100% it's hers because she designed the pattern and chose the colors so she could match the theme of her birthday, which is coming up. She never had that design before. No one else we know has had that design and shape before. On top of that, the weirdest part is that both nails have the same typical dent caused by the nail falling off. Me and B are totally weirded. I've posted this also on another similar sub as B suggested seeking insight. She joked it was the simulation glitching, but I've never really taken this thought seriously. I'm a spiritual person, so I'm used to non-physical theory of consciousness, but I've never thought about life being a simulation, and TBH it freaks me out a lot. Has anyone experienced something similar and may have some words or insights for us? Story 21. So this story happened in August of 2021, and I had recently moved into my second-year university house. We had left the search for accommodation a little bit late, so me and a buddy had to settle for a fairly dirty part of the city. The house across the street definitely had something shady going on, with boarded-up windows and people going in and out all the time. Anyway, we had no trouble the duration of our tenancy, except for one thing in my life, which I cannot possibly explain, and it still gives me intense shivers whenever I think about it. So on the day of the glitch, my plan was to clear out all of the weeds in the back garden, as well as a lot of loose rubble and general dirt in our concrete patio. My friend had not yet moved in, so I took some photos of how the garden looked to show him the work I'd be doing. After a few hours, I'd ended up with a decent-sized pile of garden waste, enough to fill a few bin bags and take to the tip, which I planned on doing. After I had put it all in a neat pile, I went inside for a drink. The area where the pile was is not even a meter away from the back door. The patio is walled on either side, with a gate into a trashed alleyway that can only be opened from the inside of the garden. When I go back out to get rid of the rubble and weeds, the pile is entirely gone. No trace of it exists. The concrete below the pile is visibly cleaner than the surrounds, as if it had been swept with a dustpan and brush. I was inside maybe 10 minutes. I quickly blocked the experience from my immediate thoughts, But occasionally when I hear unexplainable stories, this one still pops in my mind. There really is no rational explanation for the story. The gate at the back is really tall, and it's hard to stay silent while climbing it. I had to once when I had no key. And the alleyway is seriously disgusting. Plenty of broken glass and a couple rotting mattresses, as well as it only being about a meter wide. And if we are explaining it rationally, who the hell would break into someone's back garden to do a small chore and leave with no trace? Story 22. Queued at the checkout yesterday afternoon at the grocery outlet. The woman in front of me asks the cashier the price of a bottled drink, some kind of juice, 16 ounces or so sized. The cashier tells her $1.99 or whatever. The woman is like, "Oh, that's a great price. Can you please ring me up for 3, and I'll just run back and get 2 more of them then?" Cashier presumably does, and finishes ringing her up. I glance over as she's paying, and the cashier is bagging her stuff. I'm looking directly at 3 bottles of juice. The one she had on the conveyor when I got in line behind her, and I guess the other 2 that she was paying for right now. This whole exchange took like 40 seconds. The woman certainly did not leave the line to go get the bottles of juice, which weren't displayed anywhere near the checkout, let alone the exit end of it. She had 1 bottle. She only had like 4 or 5 things total, and that juice was the last thing she'd placed on the belt before politely putting the divider thing up, so I could start putting my stuff down. She checked the price, said she'd pay for 2 extra and go back for them after she was done in line, and then they were just there. The cashier bags them up, the woman pays, offers to help another woman with her bags, second woman declines, she takes her groceries and leaves the store. If video games hadn't inured me to glitchy little things like that, I imagine I'd have had a hard time pretending I hadn't just witnessed a mundane little impossible thing happen. I have no idea if either the lady or the cashier were aware that the GE had just miracled itself there and were faking not noticing anything awry or not. What if all 3 of us were absolutely effing wowed out baffled, but pretending nothing was amiss, da-da-dum, just taking care of some grocery buy-in. Normal stuff here, nothing going on. At the time I thought I was the only one who noticed, now I'm wondering.